And the theme that I'm covering is not really misunderstandings, mistranslations, but the problem that translators have in translating the Bible, that we miss some of the myth and the magic and the word plays that go into the Bible. So I thought I would take a few minutes on Shabbat last week and the next few weeks on some of those elements. So if you want to go with me, you can go over to the book of Genesis, chapters 3 and 4. I want to try to bring these few sections together today, so I'll remind you what we've done. First of all, to remember that the word Adam is not a name. The Hebrew word Adam means a human being, especially the quality of the human being as having been formed of the earth, Adamah, and as a creature with blood pulsing through him. It actually says that the Adam was split into two Zachar and Nekeva. So Adam, the human being, has two versions, Zachar and Nekeva, according to the Bible. So we like to say Adam and Eve, but it would be better to say the earth man, or Adam. And in most of the Garden of Eden story, from the chapter 2 and chapter 3, the woman of the earth man, or Adam, is not referred to as Eve, but only as his woman. It's the earth man and his woman, if we look at chapters 2 and 3. If you look at chapter 1, which is a different creation story, it would be Zachar and Nekeva, the male and female versions of Ha-Adam. So Ha-Adam is the species. Now, why is this important? Because when we look at it this way, we can recover some of the mythological sense of the book. So instead of saying Adam and Eve, and we're going to go to where Chava gets her name, once Adam and his wife are expelled from the Gan Eden, by the way, Eden here means sexual pleasure, once they are expelled from the garden of sexual pleasure, just before they're sent out, his woman, the woman of the earth man, receives her name, which is Chava, the mother of all life. As I said last week, I believe that verse is out of place because she hasn't yet given birth. Okay, so now we're going to go to chapter 4, verse 1, and we see something rather stunning if you've never looked at it before. Chapter 4, verse 1, it says the following, Veha Adam, the earth man, Yada Chava Ishto, had sexual knowledge with Chava, the mother of life, his woman. Vatahar, she became pregnant. Vateled, and she bore a child. Et Cain, her son called Cain. Vatomer, and she said, Kaniti ish et Adonai. So now we understand the meaning of his name. Kaniti, what does Kaniti mean? Well, the Hebrew word kana actually is two words, but they sound the same. They're homonyms. One word kana means to acquire, and one word kana means to create. They might be connected, but let's assume for a moment they're not. So think about this for a moment. Sometimes God, for example, is called Koneh Shamayim Va'aretz, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Not that God acquired it, but created it. Chava has a child. According to the text, she's not yet putting it together with that she has sexual intercourse with Adam, or she ignores it and says, Kaniti, I created. Kaniti, a human being, Kaniti ish, I created an ish, et Adonai, with God. Now the word et usually introduces the objective case, which means if there's going to be a verb and a direct object, you put the word et in front of it. But sometimes the word et means with. So now we're going to read this mythologically. And I want to share with this to you because you miss some of the magic of the Bible. Okay, so let's remember where we have the term knowledge. It was the tree of knowledge, Eitz Dat, Eitz Chaim, and the tree of life. So the earth man has knowledge with his wife called life. Notice the tree of knowledge and life are now embedded in chapter 4, verse 1. Earthman had knowledge with his wife called life. She becomes pregnant, has a child, and she says the child is called Cain, because I created a man with God. So don't think of his name as Cain. Think of created with God. Earthman had knowledge. With his wife, life, she called the son, I created a man with God. Now it goes from being something of a soap opera, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Creation, tricked by the snake, etc., something that is clearly mythological and archetypal. And this takes us into a way to study Torah that I've talked about before. When we look at the Bible as books of laws and stories, and not as mythological, archetypal, psychological narratives, and remember, ever since the time of the Greeks, people understood that mythology is philosophy taught as narratives. You already find this in the dialogues of Plato. This certainly anteceded Jung by a few thousand years, that myths are narratival poems communicating philosophic ideas. That's an essential thing to remember. Now, how do you know when you're reading something in the Torah that is a myth, philosophy operating as myth, for example, in this story, or philosophy operating as narrative, for example, in the other stories in Genesis, which have more of a narratival quality as opposed to a mythic quality? For right now, let's just assume that every myth, every narrative in the Torah is communicating what we would call a philosophic, psychological idea. See, that's my starting place when I study the Bible. I'm not reading laws and stories. I'm reading deep philosophic, archetypal, psychological ideas presented as myths and narratives. Okay, so that's the end of the Adam, the earthman, his wife, life, her son, Cain. Next week, I want to go into the archetypal first human being, murdering the archetypal second human being, again, as the Bible not telling us the story of a family hatred, although it is that, it's actually setting up something archetypal about the human condition, and that's for next week. This is the conclusion of my Judaism 101 for today.